Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm so excited to introduce our speakers. So, Dr. Muhammad Bakhtar is a biological anthropologist with more than 16 years of teaching and advising experience. Growing up with limited access to academic guidance, his journey shaped by curiosity, determination, and mentorship, values that continue to guide his commitment to supporting students from all backgrounds. He has published over 70 articles on brain evolution and received numerous awards. He has also held leadership roles with the Science Center of Iowa, the Iowa Science Foundation, and as president of the J.B. Johnston Club for Evolutionary Neuroscience. Before joining Des Moines University, Dr. Spachter taught at the University of Witwatersrand, UC Santa Barbara, and the George Washington University. Admired for making complex topics accessible, he emphasizes that success in science is built on resilience, curiosity, and supportive communities. Now, Ms. Tessa Johnson joined Des Moines University in 2019 as an admissions assistant and has served as a recruitment and admissions specialist for the past 3 years. She earned her bachelor's degree from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities and now works closely with applicants to the DMU's Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine and Master of Science in Anatomy programs. Ms. Johnson is passionate about learning students' unique story and providing guidance throughout the application process. She is dedicated to connecting prospective students with information, mentorship, and support as they pursue their pre-med or pre-health goals. Through her work, she advances Des Moines University's mission to improve lives in our global community by preparing diverse groups of highly competent and compassionate health professionals. Thank you all again for being with us today, and I will now pass it over to Dr. Spachter and Ms. Johnson.
Thank you very much, Christina, and thank you very much, PreMedCC, for hosting me. For hosting us from DMU, myself and Tessa. I'm going to apologize in advance if my internet connection seems to be a little unstable too. So we have the gremlins in the works today, but I'm going to try to screen share a little bit. Please let me know if you're not able to see my screen. Let's see if that goes. And maybe I'm going to pull this up there and try to full screen. There we go. Everybody see my screen? Thumbs up. Thank you very much. Thank you, folks. Well, thank you very much, PreMedCC, for hosting me today and for me to be able to tell a little bit of our journey and a little bit about our Masters of Science and Anatomy program at Des Moines University. I really love this theme of restart, refocus, and rise up because I think it's so central to my story and the story of some of my colleagues that I've had and also students that I've had the opportunity to interact with. So thank you for inviting us to this for this opportunity. Again, as you've heard a little bit, myself and Tessa Johnson will talk to you a little bit. Firstly, I'll tell you a little bit about my story, kind of emphasizing how my path towards science was kind of riddled with a few setbacks, but there are also successes, and then how those have helped shaped my ambition and my drive towards where I am now, and all those other folks that I need to thank along the way. I know I'm not going to do justice to all of those folks, but I'm just so appreciative of that. And then, of course, Miss Tessa Johnson will come in and tell you a little bit about the MSA program and other programs, perhaps, if you have any other questions. I want to encourage you to ask questions, stop me along the way. I'm okay for you to do that. I've got kind of a script here, but it's okay for us to go off script. And it's Friday night. I've got nothing else going on. So it's happy for us to kind of have a bit of a conversation. Let me dive into it and let's see. Hopefully you can still see my screen. There we go. Okay, so firstly, why post-Bacc programs? I'm the director of the Master of Science and Anatomy program, and we serve as a post-Bacc program, kind of a stepping stone for students that are interested in either going into the clinical programs. Those are programs like the Physician Assistance Program or the Medical Student Program, that's a DO program. But we also have a number of other students that are interested in careers either in teaching, that's teaching anatomy, or moving on to graduate work within the sciences, that is either in biological anthropology or in neuroscience or any kind of specific component within anatomy. And I think that talks to one of the important, I would say, goals or the benefits of a post-Bacc program is that it's a lovely little bridge for the student moving from that undergraduate coursework towards that graduate coursework. That is a step up often. It is really a step up. You're not familiar with it. If you've ever heard folks talk about the medical program and talking about it, it's the old cliche. It's like drinking from a fire hose, That's the truth of the matter, because there is a stepping stone there that you need to do. You need to kind of adjust to that. And how do you best prepare yourself for that step up and being able to really put your best foot forward when you really enter into the program? And that's where I think post-bac programs are really unique. They help build that foundational knowledge that you need, also helping you meet those prerequisites for those advanced training. So those could be things like improving your GRE or your MCAT scores. That's where a post-bac program is great value for your money, an opportunity to learn, to see what that's like, to sit with other colleagues who are perhaps in a similar track or in an adjoining track that you want to head towards, and go toe to toe with them and see whether you're able to focus and learn a little bit about not only that program, but also about yourself during that time period. And that's what I think is really great about these post-bac programs. Many of them also offer a unique exposure, an exposure to, I would say, very nice, um, very specific environments. So for instance, let's look at our program in anatomy. Is kind of exposing you to a kind of a mini medical school environment where you are sitting in the classroom doing pretty much the same coursework that the medical students are doing. So in that sense, you get a feel for what that coursework is like and how you would perform in that program while meeting those prerequisites that you might need. And the great thing with it is you don't have to go into the long-term commitment there. If you kind of see where you're at and you're like thinking, well, maybe this isn't for me, you've had that opportunity to kind of get a taster for it and to step back and to reassess what you'd like to do. Okay. These programs also provide unique pathways. These are for, I would say, for career shifts. This was very important in my own experience, as someone initially heading towards kind of in the pre-med portion, thinking I wanted to be a physician. And then along the path, realizing, well, I'd actually be a shoddy doctor. I'd be actually do a better job of it being a scientist. And that was really important for me to kind of see what my skill set was and what my strengths was. And I've encountered that with many of our students. I'm thinking back to a student that I had a few years back, Brian S. His dad was a dentist and had a practice, and he was convinced I'm going to be a dentist. And he came into the program. He wanted to solidify his knowledge in anatomy. And while he's there, he goes on a mission with us. He goes on a mission trip to the Dominican Republic, and he realizes, wow, there's so much different to the interaction that a medical doctor has than that of a dentist. And he realizes, you know what? I want to reassess where I'm going. I actually want to throw uh, my name in the hat and apply to the medical program. And Brian S., through our mentorship, was able to successfully get towards that path and prepare himself adequately for that program. And I think, you're going to learn something about my talk here, and you're going to realize that there's that realization that our paths are not these linear paths, that we all have these kind of windy, twisty paths in our little tree of life. And that's acceptable. That's okay to have that. Okay. Because as long as we learn and we're able to reflect on that and to understand how that helps, would say, improve and strengthen our skill sets. Talking about improving and strengthening our skill sets and skill set development, that's also a very important component of a post-bac program. So those could be critical skills such as lab skills or critical thinking skills in general, or they could be developing your confidence. Let's say if you are interested in going into a PhD, it could be confidence in research and experience in research. That is something else. An important component would be professional skill set development. Being able to see your advisors or your either clinical mentors, or it could be faculty modeling those professional skill sets, and the same thing with the upperclassmen. That becomes an important part of realizing, what I need to do to be part of this career that I've chosen. Okay, and that was very important to me to be able to see that. And I'm sure for those of you who've perhaps done a little bit of shadowing experience out there, you're starting to kind of get an idea for, what are those professional skills I might need or you might need to get to that point. Those mentors are so important, having good mentorship opportunities. And that is something that I think is very key to most post-bac programs. I don't just want to talk about my post-bac program, but you're looking for a post-bac program that has a good almost a one-to-one relationship between the faculty and the students. So you can kind of build that good relationship, that rapport with them. And when you do that, you develop an opportunity to build, firstly, meaningful letters of support, because they're usually small classrooms. But also the other thing is that you build a meaningful relationship, hopefully, that will go beyond your time just in that post-bac program, a relationship that will continue into your other field. Now, I've got some mentors that I write to every year. I see them, I write to them at Christmas. I say to give them updates on where I am, even though I'm so far removed from where I started out, but we continue to keep that conversation going because these are friendships you want to keep for the rest of your life. Invest in it, be part of it. They are interested in you. They want to help you towards your career set. And so keep those relationships going. Of course, I mentioned, the opportunity that post-bac programs offer in terms of exploring new interests. Those are good, but also building those networks, communication skills. So again, more confidence, and then those supporting environments. And I want to say those supporting environments are not just from faculty and staff, but also from peers and other folks that are in your cohort. You're going to learn so much from them in that close one-to-one interaction. That's a great opportunity to realize that you're not alone in this boat. There are other folks that also are going there, and they're going to be a good support mechanism for you. Quick little introductions to myself. For those of you folks that are sitting in the back there and thinking, okay, what's with the weird accent? Okay. Firstly, let me emphasize, I'm from South Africa. Okay. As I often say to my students, that kind of makes me from the deep South. South Africa is better known for Nelson Mandela, the safari. If you're into there, I guess Trevor Noah is the most recent folks know from South Africa. I did all of my undergraduate studies and my graduate work in Southern Africa before coming out to the US in 2007. And then I spent my time on both the West Coast and the East Coast. I taught at UCSB for a while, and then moved to Washington, D.C., where I decided to reinvent myself, and I went back, developed my skill set through a postdoctoral mentorship program. And that's something you're going to learn. Like when you're into this career path, especially within the biomedicines, there's always a desire to try to improve upon your skills to see if you can go back and learn and add some more to your skill set. And that should be part of your goal. And that's what I did. I said, I want to go back, I want to learn something else. And I did that in DC. And then I came to the middle of the country after that and took up my first job at Des Moines University. My focus is looking at the brain of different animals, particularly looking at language areas and the evolution of the brain in primates, carnivores, and then fossil hominids. And I love and I enjoy interacting with students both at the undergraduate level and at the high school level. So we spend quite a bit of time at Des Moines University through our graduate programs working with that. My story is an interesting story.
Dr. Spector, really
Yes.
quick, I think we're stuck on your second slide here.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you for jumping in. Let's see if this goes back.
Absolutely.
Can you see this one? No?
I still can't know. I wonder if,
Let
yeah,
me
we
stop
need
the
to.
share and go back again. Thank you for telling me. Let's see if I
Of
can
course,
get going there. Can you see that second slide?
that's
Wait.
perfect.
Okay, there we go. And this is what I was talking about, just talking about my origins in South Africa and then making my way to the US. And of course, yes, my interest in comparative anatomy. Has that transitioned? Yes. Thank you. Of course, I grew up in apartheid South Africa, and that was a different time and a different place. My family had quite a challenging background. Neither of my parents, should I say, firstly, graduated high school. My dad was a construction worker, and my mom was kind of the equivalent of a CNA, which is a staff nurse. And while I'd say there's a picture of my mom and there's my dad and there's my mom and that's me when I was a little younger, I'd say both of my parents would say they were had a troubled upbringing from the other side of the street, other side of the railway line, as they would say. They had high ambitions for my brother and I, and they wanted us to go beyond where they were, and I think one of the key things that my dad had done is he said, he knew the gang violence in the part of South Africa that we were, and we wanted us to kind of move away from that and try to do something different. And so, and that ambition and that desire, that goal that they had set out for us is something that I carried with me. Okay. Unfortunately, it's often a hurdle. The only thing my parents knew at that stage was if you're going to succeed, you have to be a medical doctor or you need to be a lawyer. Those were the only two career paths that my parents had any idea about. But, we made our, as I entered into a college, I started to open my eyes to what are the other career paths that were out there. Let's look at the first day of school. First day of school, you're ambitious, you're anxious, you're interested in different things. Some of the earlier things that I was interested in was becoming a veterinarian. So I think very early on there was a recognition that I kind of like biology and animals, whether it's the human animal or the animal animal. I kind of like that. I knew that. And um, and I'd say, while both my parents were influential, and I was fortunate enough to have both my parents guide me in certain ways, I think my mom was particularly influential in that she, through her staff nurse experiences, showed me a little bit of what biomedicine looked like. Okay. And just as a nurse, you might think that's not much, but it was something pretty high in our community. And I got to be able to see that. Here's my mom in the middle, and here's some of the first Siamese twins that were born at the hospital, the public hospital at that stage. And she worked for 35 years working as a nurse, and she showed a dedication to service. Uh, and um, and then likewise through my dad, I saw, the work ethic that was required. While he's just a construction worker, he woke up every day, he got things going, he made sure that he provided for his family. And those essential, those ideas of, I saw that in the quotes that were given for a pre-med CC was get up, get going, get dressed. Those seem like really menial things, but they are so important things of getting your mind and your body ready for action. Okay. And being committed to your goal. And those were important to me already at that stage. As I entered in, I finished off high school. I did everything that most folks who are interested in going into medicine would do. In South Africa, we have a slightly different path where you could get into medicine either straight away in what we call the usual kind of 7-year medical track. And so at that stage, I was interested in doing that, but I did not get into the program. And so I thought, well, I asked around, and a few folks said, why don't you do a BSc, a Bachelor of Science, which would put together some of the curriculum that you would see in the medical program? And I went along that path and knew nothing about it. And 4 years later, I graduated with a BSc in human biology and medical cell biology. And then 2 years after that, I made my way to a master's in physical anthropology during that path, learning something else about myself, learning some about my interests, and then did a PhD in human biology, which I then completed in 3 years. And now I'm here at Des Moines University as a professor. Been here for about 14 years. And that's a really nice linear path, isn't it? It's just nice. It's straightforward. Of course, that's how life works out. Not really. Okay. As you all know, it's very few of us have this nice straight path towards our career goals. And this was the same thing for me. Just like I moved forward and you want to head towards there, but to heading towards there, you might get sidetracked along the way. You might realize, hey, maybe that's not quite where I want to go. I want to go the other way. Maybe I learned something different about myself. I learned something different about myself throughout my process here. And some of that, as I made my way from the BSc, from this undergraduate towards graduate work, let's just say there were a few distractions, there were a few disruptions, there were a few, yes, other things. Okay. There was course failure. There was course failure there, and that added in an extra year in my path that I was placed on academic probation. And when I told my wife I was going to say that, she said, "Oh, you won't inspire them. You might steer them away." I said, "Well, I wanted to be real. I wanted to let you know that you can still succeed even if you don't start off like you wanted to do." Again, when I'm thinking of my own background, I had no idea what to expect in undergraduate. Okay. I thought you just pitch up. Man, I was smart in high school. I did this. This should be a breeze. Okay. And I knew nothing. And even when I did not perform like I should, I had no idea who to turn to. I was afraid to turn to the university. This is a big school, like 35,000 students on it. I didn't know where to go. I didn't want to go in and I don't know. I think it's the embarrassment that students have about trying to go in and see their professors, going in, trying to look for help. I didn't even know when I went up meeting with, eventually placed on probation, I realized how important it was to read the syllabus, where I had missed easy points about just attending X thing when I was rather, I don't know, hanging out with my buddies. Okay, how important that was. Those are simple things that I could have done so much better job with it. And if only I had that mentorship, if only I had those folks who could have helped me towards that. Again, we're thinking in our mind a little bit, what is that structure? What is that background you want to have to be able to help support you, to avoid the disappointment. And there was a lot of disappointment. There's disappointment from my family. Again, just first generation college student making his way through, high hopes. I remember my parents were phoning everyone from across the country, like, yeah, he's going to college, he's gonna do. And then I don't do well like they want. There was a lot of tears, a lot of self-doubt at that stage. And then, of course, the financial issue and the uncertainty about what to do next. Okay, whether to persist on the path or whether to simply go out and work. Yeah, my dad was a construction. He was like, hey, maybe you should just leave it and come back and do construction with me. Okay. I had to restart. I had to refocus. I had to somehow build myself up so that I could rise again, so that I can move on to that master's in physical anthropology. I was fortunate enough that I got a bit of support. And I'm going to show you this here. My first mentor was assigned to me by the university. And this was very unusual because the university usually has, in South Africa, if I think of that first year class, they would say 50% of the class fails, the other 50% of the class kind of heads up. There was a really high attrition rate at our university, especially for first generation college students. And I was assigned during the summer when I had to, under my probation period, they assigned me to Professor Mary Scholes. At the stage, I had no idea who she was. She was an old lady. That's all I knew. She was an old lady that I had to pitch up every day to early in the morning. I was at her lab. She was a plant environmental scientist. So she would pull these plants out. She would measure the roots and she'd put them back in. And every day she'd do this. And this was the task that I do. I'd pitch up early in the morning. I'd help her measure it. And then at the end of the day, we'd go and we'd do all this menial tasks. And it was kind of weird. Okay. It was weird, but it was refreshing because it got me into a habit of getting up, being committed, pitching up on time, and also realizing that academics, but just ordinary people too. And while we sat there and we manually worked through these things, we spoke. She talked to me. She said, "Oh, Mohammed, what else do you want to do? Oh, you had these challenges. What are these challenges that you had? How do you think, what are the things you would think you might be interested in studying really? If this doesn't go right, you don't get into medicine." And we started those conversations. And through these really seemed like informal conversations at the time, Professor Mary Scholes helped me to realize what my passion was. And my passion really was structure. I wanted to look at structure. Unfortunate for her, it was not plant structure, it was animal structure. Okay. But, that was my first mentorship there. And I'm emphasizing this point here for you again, because I want you to realize that sometimes the mentor that works best for you is not necessarily the mentor that you envisaged in your mind. When I envisaged in my mind and I thought about it, I thought I might have a mentor of color that would help me, that had my experience and my life experience, and that person would be the person that would drive me and take me to the next path. But I can tell you, Prof. Scholes, as this unassuming older white lady, helped me throughout that process. And she was just the right person that I needed at the right time. Okay. And so I want you to be open to that. Open yourself out. Don't narrow your focus when you're thinking of mentors. Be open to a whole range of different mentors. Take the best from them and learn from that experiences. Through her, I was set on a course towards physical anthropology, as we call it in South Africa. It's actually biological anthropology, which is that merger between anatomy and anthropology. And here's a picture from my time as a master's student, where I had to restart, I would say, refocus in a sense, and rise and build myself through there. I had a number of mentors. So, and if you folks can see, that's me there in another time. And I had a number of mentors in this department. And it was the first time that I really felt again that, hey, here's a family, here's an academic family, a group of folks from all across the world. I was fortunate enough, this is a department that's a really big department, and they had folks that would travel in from different parts of the world, okay, everywhere from Australia to the UK, and they'd come in and visit, and they'd lend their encouragement to the way we do science there. Some of the most influential folks that I had there was, for instance, Mr. Elijah Mofokeng. He's unfortunately passed away, but Mr. Elijah Mofokeng was such a great mentor, and that's why you see me standing there with him. And he was just a staff member in anatomy, but he and I bonded over jazz music, firstly, but secondly, over anatomy. And he ran the curatorship program, the body donor program, and helped me understand a little bit about what that process looks like and how important the donors are towards anatomy and the study of anatomy. And also curating a data set, a large data set. We had like 4,000 individuals that he curated during that time. There were other mentors. Mr. Anthony Kegley, he was actually from the USA, and he came to study a master's there in South Africa. And he opened my eyes also to the first time that, wow, there are other ways you can apply your anatomy knowledge to other career sets, and looking at beyond my experience in Africa. Okay, probably the first time I even thought of coming to the US was thanks to Anthony Kegley. I had other mentors in the form of the head of department at the time, Professor Beverly Kramer, and Professor John Maynard too, who was so influential in helping me see what a professor would look like, the professionalism and expectations of a professor. And then last but not least, I should say, I had a colleague, he's now Dr. Jason Hemingway, but he and I was at the time studying together, and I learned from him, my year again, first generation college student, getting to know folks. It was hard for me to break out of my little bubble where I felt that I could finally be comfortable with someone else, okay, share those experiences. I thought that Jason and I had nothing in common, but I was wrong. We had so much in common, and his peer support is what helped me. I didn't have a computer at home. Jason had a computer at home. We buddied up together and we worked together, okay, and we helped one another. And through that support, we both were able to graduate from the program later on. Again, the importance of those peers that you're working with. I was fortunate enough that that's a program that was very small. So we had about 6 students in the program there, in that master's program, and we worked very closely. As I restarted my focus in anatomy, and particularly in anatomy of the brain, here you can see me working in the field, but fortunate enough to work both in the field and in the lab, seeing how I can apply my knowledge of the brain towards understanding the human condition, how human thought, language evolved. And through that process, again, learning from other folks from all across Africa. Here's a few folks from Nigeria who I had the opportunity to work with, and learn a little bit about what their experiences are, and also understand that while I had a challenging experience, there were other folks who had some really challenging experiences to make it to that point in time. And that really helped me value my effort, or value my path. And I would, you can almost think of it, just how fortunate I was to be able to be at that point. Okay. So when you look at the story here, you might say, wow, that's nice. Look at this gentleman here. Yeah, GT had a lot more hair than I currently have. Okay, but he looks like a self-made man. He looks like a self-made man that made his way in human biology, and PhD. But I want you to zoom out of that picture. If you zoom out of that picture, you see that self-made man was not that self-made man. He had a family, he had community support. That was important. That was an important part of me persisting throughout that process. Okay. I always laugh at this picture. It's kind of an awkward family photo, but it was really cold during that time. But if you zoom out of this picture again, not only did I have family and community support that was important to me in helping me succeed, I think a broader perspective again, I had the support of mentors. Okay. And here in this case, I had not expected Professor Paul Manga to be my mentor, but he is my mentor. He's a burly Australian crazy Australian, as I always said, but he helped guide me towards my career path in neuroanatomy specifically, and the same for these other Professor Tobias and Professor Sherwood. Again, focusing and rising up and realizing how I could be an expert in that. Again, open your mind, be pliable in terms of your mentors. I'm just going to mention like one success story from our program here, Dr. Rufin Chakonte, who is a recent DO. He's a medical doctor, and he came through our program. Again, one of those folks who came through our program was trying to find his way around, had an ambition, had a drive to want to become a medical doctor, and knew that he needed to refine his skill set. As brilliant as he was, he knew he needed to refine his skill set, build up his GPA again, and prepare himself for that MCAT. And he placed those in his path there. He was very deliberate about seeking out that guidance and that mentorship. Okay. And that's what I want you to get out of this. I want you to think to yourself as you reflect on our opportunity here, think about what are the skills that you need to develop. Who would be those mentors, or what type of support would you need along that journey, and who would provide that support to you? And then think about the setbacks that you've had. I've shown you some of the setbacks that I've had, but those setbacks have shaped you. Okay. And perhaps they've shaped your goals, realizing that, oh, well, I'm not quite maybe going in this career path any longer. I'm going somewhere else. That's okay. You're learning something about yourself. You're learning something about what that career path might look like. But also, I think it's important, again, understanding and reflecting on those experiences, seeing what is the best you can take out of those experiences. I'm just going to give a few testimonials, because I always look at this and I try to see what students might say. And you're few students just looking at testimonials from our program. Thank you for the opportunity to further my education. Let's just look at the bolded here. Very good on my resume for residency. It made me stand out. Every program asked about it. That's kind of interesting. What this individual really liked about this thing was that a post-bac program like a master's in anatomy helped them stand out from the crowd. It helped show that they had a refined, a detailed understanding of anatomy. That's cool. They understood that. That's what they wanted, and that's what they got out of it. Let's look at the other person here. I'm currently in the midst of cardiothoracic surgery residency. Although it's stressful at times, I'm enjoying my training. I must say, the projects we had for the Masters of Anatomy course really helped, including the audio lecture we had to do. So this person had to design several online interactive lectures. So again, what is that skill set that you're going to develop that's going to help you in your career path? Does that post-bac program provide you with that immersive experiences that you want to be able to see yourself succeeding in that career? If that is what you're looking for, then try to find that program that's going to match what you're looking for. Okay. And then also, I saw this little portion the person mentioned. She said the education and also various extracurricular activities that help prepare them. Sometimes some of the curriculum is not just that what we see within the program itself, but there might be other things that the university offers. It could be things like, I'm looking at the diversity health series, for instance, that Des Moines University offers. That's another opportunity for students from very unique backgrounds to reflect on that, to think about how they can improve their applications. Again, looking at the cohorts, think about the cohorts, think about the interaction you're looking for, think about that community you're looking for. Can you see yourself in the community? Can you find that community? Can you find the support there? Those immersive experiences, an example for us in our program, we want our students to be able to really refine and develop their teaching skill set. Okay. And so in the first year, they're taking anatomy, but in the second year, they are an extension of our teaching team. They're an important part of our teaching team. We want our students, they wear the blue lab coats. They are teachers. They are modeling that skill set. Okay. And they're modeling that, not only showing us, but they're showing it to the lower classmen how to be an instructor, how to be, an educator. And educating is not just unique to, being a professor, but you remember, you're going to educate as a clinician, you're going to educate your colleagues, and as a clinician, you're going to educate your patients again. So being able to translate that information across, to communicate it articulately, is really important. Of course, success stories are important, and I know you can get this very else. I'm just going to point out here again, what is the success rate or the placement of the programs that you're interested in? Look for that. Think about those placements. In the MSA program, we've always had high placements in both the graduate level programs, okay, but also into the clinical programs. Those are important for us. But also when we look at our dual degree students, those dual degree students that are making an impact. Here's Dr. Erica Warple is just one example, who runs a surgery lab component at Unity Point Health. Again, an important part of us, just looking at the success that we want to see. Those are the types of programs. And that success comes from that interaction that you have, that studious interaction with the faculty, and that opportunity also to develop your own skill sets. Now, Tessa, I may have spoken a little bit long here. How are we doing on time?
I can keep my slide nice and short, so
Okay,
feel free to take a couple more minutes here.
Okay, great. And I was going to do a little bit of an before we go on to that last slide, Tessa. I was going to do a little bit of an interactive thing here, just for anyone who wants to talk a little bit here. And you don't have to contribute if you don't want to contribute. We'll see how this goes. But this was just an idea for us to think about those unique challenges that we've had, and thinking about resilience as an ongoing process. And so we're going to, hypothetically, you can, if you feel comfortable, you can unmic yourself, you can help us construct this collaborative timeline for this individual, where we're going to add in some key components of this individual's path, whatever they might be, and think about how they might have overcome those challenges, or what are those challenges that they can talk to. Again, during this time, I remember when talking to my fellow colleagues who were with me in graduate school, understanding the unique challenges that they had, I was able to develop an empathy and develop that peer support that I needed to realize that I'm not alone in my desires and my goals and in the challenges that I've had. Okay. So here's my little take at this. I haven't played with this one before, but let's see if it works. So even if we don't go all the way through today, what I was hoping for you to do is just to think in your mind, be very deliberate about where you at and where you want to be. And then thinking about those challenges that you've had, the turning points that you've had in your career path, how those challenges have challenged you to come up with a new path, and then to head towards the development, and then support and mentorship and the success you may have had. So for instance, let's think of a challenge here. Maybe who wants to add in a challenge? What would be a challenge that a student might encounter as an undergraduate? Anyone? How about if I add in, okay, I won't. How about if I add in, let's see. Oh, it's in the chat. I'm seeing a few chats there. Let's see. There we go.
Yeah, we are using the webinar, so you can't unmute yourself, but people are
my
putting in the chat.
apologies.
That's
My
okay.
apologies. I see from Michelle Perez a GPA drop. Yeah, there's a GPA drop. That's right, Michelle. Yeah. So you have a challenge, your GPA drop. That's perhaps a setback for you. What was your turning point at that point? You realize, well, maybe now, because of this GPA drop, I'm perhaps at risk of not reaching my particular goal that I may want to have. What am I going to do to improve upon that? So skill development. Be very deliberate about what are those resources you're going to do. Those could be resources as in a tutor, a peer tutor. Those could be resources as an instructor, going in and seeing your faculty. Okay. Those could be, I don't know, maybe you have a center for educational enhancement. Those are all important. And then beyond that, what is the support and mentorship that you might need to help overcome that challenge? Okay. Who are the mentors? Who are the other folks who can help you towards that? And then what would success look like for you? Being able to see that bump up there, that'd be great. Okay. How do you maintain that growth all the way through? I know I've played it here. I didn't mean to give you homework on Friday night, but again, those are things that we need to be deliberate about it. I think that's the one thing that I learned about. Just articulating my goals wasn't enough. I needed to be like my wife and put together a list, put it down, write it down, reflect on it every morning and think, okay, that's what I need to do to get to that point. And let's make sure I move on to the next step, okay? I'm going to leave it there. I know I've gone on a little bit more than I should have, perhaps. There's one other thing I want to add here before I let Tessa jump into the last part here. I just want to emphasize this point. I think as a mentor to students and as a faculty mentor to many students, I emphasize how important it is for our students to come in and see us and to learn from their faculty mentors and to take the good that they get from us and to apply it in their career sets. But there's something else that I also learned during my time is how important it is, even while I have not achieved my goals, to give back to the community and how rewarding that could be. So while perhaps the best experiences I had was when I went to see a faculty, when a mentor, perhaps struggling, maybe let's say their GPA drop, and then the very next year after I completed the course, I tried to be a tutor, or I volunteered as a peer tutor to help another student. Okay, was less fortunate to say, how can I give back? How can I assist? And that was so rewarding to me. That helped me. That also helped refine my knowledge. Again, in anatomy, we are big on teaching. Teaching is the best way to learn something. It is a good way of refining it, but also you develop a lifelong, I think, model of giving back to the community. So I want to encourage you along that path, if that's where I can leave you. Tessa, please feel free to go ahead. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Dr. Spector. I will keep this nice and short, and anybody that feels like our MSA program could be a part or one of your next steps, a part of your journey, I am always happy to set up a one-on-one follow-up call, direct you to a little bit more information here. But just a really brief overview, if you do decide that you're ready to move forward with our Master of Science in Anatomy program, I wanted to give a really brief overview of what the admissions process looks like, and then what we're looking for in students that we think would be a really good fit for our program. So just sort of the logistics right away. We use a centralized application service, so that's Post-Bacc. That basically means that you submit your transcripts, write your personal statement, submit letters of recommendation, you send that all to that centralized application, and then you choose the schools like Des Moines University that you want to receive your application. We use rolling admission, which means as soon as we get the first application, we review them, we start our interview process, we start filling seats in the class. So it is always to your advantage to apply as early as you feel prepared. It does get a lot more competitive as we get to that end of the application cycle, and we may just not have that many seats available in the program at that point. Make sure that you meet the prerequisite requirements. So we do require a bachelor's degree before you enter our MSA program, and there are some specific courses that we want to see as well. Those line up pretty well with medical school prerequisites. So for our DO program or for other medical schools, you're generally going to want to see things like the biology, chemistry, physics, that sort of thing. Those are going to be the same sort of prerequisites that we want to see as well. I will say a little caveat to that. Students that want to go on to medical school afterwards do our non-thesis track. We also do have a thesis track for students that are more interested in a little bit of a research career path, which would be pairing up directly with one of our faculty members. In that case, the prerequisites might be a little bit different because they're not designed to prepare you for entering medical school in the future. In terms of once you get the application submitted, we review it on our end. I wanted to make sure to add a couple of things here that we really look for in a competitive applicant. So I know GPA is a big one. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a perfect 4.0 GPA, but some things that we're looking for are, have you taken some of those prerequisites, some of the hard science courses, and have you done well in them? Maybe your academic journey had some bumps like we talked about, things didn't go as planned, but then did you come back from that? Did you make improvement? We can see, what did your GPA look like right away when you first started taking some college courses? And then afterwards, what has it looked like most recently? In terms of experience, it is really helpful to have some sort of experience when you're writing your personal statement, when you're talking about why you want to attend this program, why you have your dreams to attend medical school or whatever your end goal ends up being. Being able to have some sort of hands-on experience really helps because you can talk about the specific situations and talk about the characteristics that you have, that you've developed through working with patients, through volunteering in your community, holding a leadership position in a club or student organization, something like that. And that can be really, really diverse. So I think we've seen a pretty wide variety of experiences and backgrounds for our students. And we love to see that because everybody is a little bit different and then they bring their own expertise and experiences into that program. And then I sort of mentioned it, but tell us your story. That is a really big part of the application process. We want to have students that are excited about DMU, they're excited about anatomy. We just want to know, what's your path? How did you get here? So that is a really good thing to keep in mind as you're writing your personal statement. Make sure that you're selling yourself and that you're not selling yourself short. So talk about the qualities that you have that you've built up through your specific life experiences, your work experience, whatever it may be. We love to get as complete of a picture of you as a person as we can during the application process. So I'll leave it there. Happy to answer any other questions that come up in the Q&A here. I also will be back in a couple of weeks to dive a little bit more into admissions for our DO program specifically, but I'm happy to answer other questions at that point too.
Thank you, Tessa. And I'm happy to stay online, folks. If you feel uncomfortable asking a question in front of the audio, or you want me to hang around a little bit, I'm happy to answer any questions. So please,
Yeah,
guys.
anybody could post the questions in the Q&A section, and you could even ask it anonymously.
Sure.
So we won't know it's you, but this is your time. We have Dr. Spactor and Ms. Johnson here, and ask all the other questions. And I think this is the one I'm going to ask because everybody's going to ask. What are the GPA requirements, and what's the lowest, the highest, the range? And then also, do you have to take the MCAT for this program?
That's definitely a great opening point because those numbers are just the easiest to compare, right? So we don't have a minimum requirement for GPA. We do recommend at least a 2.8 overall. And that overall is a combination of any coursework that you complete at the community college level as you're completing your bachelor's degree, all of that added together. Our average GPA for admitted students is usually somewhere around 3.2 to 3.4. We end up having a pretty big range with that as well, though. And no, we do not require the MCAT for our MSA program.
Yes.
This is another question. If you do you do any prep work for the MCAT? And also, is there any linkages with DMU, College of Osteopathic Medicine?
That's a good question. So let me answer that, Jobin. Unfortunately, of course, I have never taken the MCAT myself personally because I'm not a clinician, okay? Many of our students do end up doing prep work. Those could come either through our program itself. So our program itself, we feel that the first year, especially what we call the foundations course that does a review of biochemistry and physiology, and then also we have anatomy there, we feel that's really good preparation for students. And then secondly, we've, of course, students have the opportunity to learn from upperclassmen and folks like that. And also at DMU, we do offer other kind of prep opportunities. So there's textbooks and books that are available, Princeton Review and things like that are available for students to prepare. And then also the upperclassmen help guide folks on how to actually prepare mentally in terms of a scheduling perspective for that examination. I think the biggest hurdle that I see for students is students rushing in just because everyone else is taking it. They feel like they've got to take it now. And I think that's the biggest thing you got to say to yourself personally, when am I most ready for this examination? Because it is, I would say, something you've got to prepare for. You've got to be ready for it. Don't just dive in blank and think, oh, it's okay, it's getting the first take at it. I'm going to take it 2, 3, 4 times. No. Sit down, dedicate your time towards it. Don't be working unnecessarily. Have that time to focus in on this. Now, what was the other question, Jobin? I'm trying to remember.
If there's any linkages, do you
we do.
do you get
like a pathway.
extra push?
Yeah, we do have a pathway. We have a pathway to the medical program that's established through a link with the master's program in anatomy, and we have a guaranteed 2 seats to students that meet particular prerequisites. That's in the MCAT, both an MCAT prerequisite and a GPA requisite within the program and an undergraduate. I've got to be honest with you, when you look at that on paper, and that's available for folks to see, when you look at it on paper, you might say, wow, geez, there's no way I can get to that. Okay. And based on my experience, I don't want students to feel in any way like, oh no, because my undergraduate didn't meet that requirement, whatever it was, 3.3 or 3.5 or something like that, I'm not going to be able to get that. Again, when you're in this program with us, I think what gives you I'd say the leg up is the fact that you're taking the same coursework with the medical students. And so you're able to perform. And so we're looking at that holistic review in a sense. We're looking at how the students performing in those courses, if I can say so, Tessa. I think those are big, heavy ones that help. And then, of course, you're getting the support from your mentors, like us, like myself, who is advisors. We're going to write those letters of support to help you on that path, to talk about your unique journey, to talk about what you bring towards the program itself. So I think that's what gives it a little the edge over those students that are coming into our program to help them to succeed.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add on top of that is I know Dr. Spector mentioned earlier, but some of the MSA coursework is actually a couple of the same courses that DO students take their first term. So if you're doing well in that, that gives us a really good idea that you're going to be successful in medical school. And then one other thing, our Center for Educational Enhancement, that is where all of our academic support comes through. That is for every student on campus. So our anatomy students have the same support as our medical students do. So that can absolutely help as well with getting that mentorship, getting those study skills for the MCAT or for your future courses. You have quite a bit of support available there.
Yeah. And to add also free peer tutors, which I think is underutilized, but we have free peer tutors to allow folks to come. So these are upperclassmen. Again, this idea of wanting to give back, to share, to refine your own knowledge. That's what our upperclassmen do. These are folks in the medical program or in the master's program who kind of continue to be peer tutors to other students.
And so we have a question that someone actually asked, and it was in regards to, I guess, the PA and MD program, and they were asking if this program can help boost their undergraduate GPA, or would it be calculated separately if they were to apply to a PA or MD program in the future?
Yeah, I can only really speak to what our programs do. We look at GPA separately for undergraduate and graduate coursework. And because this is a graduate level program, if we're doing this calculation, it would be combined into that graduate coursework, and it would also count towards your overall GPA, which again is kind of the summation of everything that you've completed. If other programs are doing things similarly to us, where we look pretty closely at performance over time in the most recent coursework, that's where a program like this can be really helpful in boosting your overall academic record.
Yeah, I think that AMCAS, you have different grades are separated by level and also but also science versus non-science, and so there's like different super scores. The other question is, and I know most of the people on this call are from California, and we don't try to do it on purpose, but it just happens. How's living in Des Moines, Iowa different than, and I think the only person, probably Dr. Sparker, I mean, you lived in Santa Barbara, so I don't know about like that's not real California either, so comparable.
Jobin, I think that's such a good question. I think I remember when I moved out from DC, my boss was saying, "What are you going to Iowa for? There's nothing but corn and pigs." And I laughed and I said, hey, this is, I think in a sense, Iowa falls into the same kind of generalizations that South Africa fell into. People think that we're running around there in loincloth, and there's lions all around the corner. But when you get there and you realize, wow, there's a good infrastructure. There's a lot more than what you see on TV about Iowa. Okay. Again, Central Iowa is very different. There's folks are passionate about this school. Folks are passionate about the area. There's a big city. You're going to have a little bit of everything that you can find. We have a thriving community. I think we have good pockets of diversity for folks. Folks like myself. First thing I came for was like, where can I find halal food, or where can I find, I don't know, ex-religious community center? I could find it. Okay. And we get that very often from our students. Tessa, you could perhaps expand upon that. Those are important things for us to see. And that's why even for the Cali kids that are on here, we get a lot of Cali kids that stay. I guess I could add the cost of living is something that's important. Okay. And what else? Am I missing something there, Tessa? I think I must be missing my selling point here.
Yeah, I mean, cost of living and parking is quite a bit easier. We're a mid-sized city, but we never really have a bad rush hour or trouble parking anywhere, especially on our brand new campus. We have all the space in the world. I mean, you're going to need a winter coat, but I think that is the main thing. We get, especially for all of our programs, quite a bit of students from all over. So you're certainly not going to be the only one that's a little bit far from home. And I think students find a really good community when they're at DMU.
Oh yeah, and the commute, of course. I remember in DC, it took me an hour just to get from one point to the other, and it's like 20 minutes is the maximum that you get to get anywhere from either side of Des Moines.
There's only two things I know about Iowa is I did a bike race out there a few years ago called Rag Bar.
Yay, right. Yeah.
And the other part of it too is I've been out there for two political campaigns.
Uh-huh.
And that's the only two things I personally knew before I ever went about Iowa. But it's a very diverse. The nice thing I like is it's very flat, which is kind of nice. You don't, considering living in, I live in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. You don't
Uh-huh.
hit a lot of hills, but
No.
yeah, but I also found that I ran, through Rag Bar, you ride your bike. I've passed temples, I've passed mosques. I've
Mhm.
passed Sikh temples, and yeah, so it's a very diverse, and from people, not not going there, they don't know, but until you get there, and it's a very diverse place. So my my experience with Iowa was that. Um, Somebody wants to know if the interviews are done on Zoom or in person for the
Yes,
for
I
the
know that
for
was for
programs.
our DO program.
Oh,
We do a two-step virtual interview for our DO program. For our MSA program, it is also completely virtual, but live on Zoom. So a chance to chat a little bit with Dr. Spoctor and a few of our other MSA faculty members.
Yes.
and they want to know what's the duration of the program and if it's full time or part time.
Okay. So our program, I mean, you could take it both ways. So full time, it would be roughly about 2 years. I don't know exactly to the month, but it's about 2 year program. That's what it's designed. You can take up to a maximum of 5 years. Okay. If you want to do that as a part-time level. And, I always emphasize that when you look at it, the prescribed plan that we have there, again, students are welcome to deviate from that prescribed plan and think of like what's going to be best suited for them. So, for instance, I had students this year who realized, based on their experience, maybe the biochemistry and anatomy having that overlap of content would be a little challenging for them, and they wanted to take a break from that and separate them out. So what we did is we separated out the biochemistry a little bit, let them focus in on that coursework in the first year, biochem and physiology, and then came back in the second year doing the anatomy. Again, my goal as a program director, thinking about where the student wants to head towards, is thinking of what would be the hurdles that the student would have. If they want to if they want to get the GPA up, I don't want them to be failing in the course, in their coursework. Yeah. Okay. So so I'd be advising them correctly, at least in terms of how best to make sure that they are getting the resources that they need, but also finding that correct balance. Okay.
Awesome. Does anybody have any other questions? Anyone? Uh, oh, somebody else wants to know what are some of the courses? Is it just anatomy and physiology?
So the first year of our program consists of both, we call it, it's a composite course that's known as Foundations, which has the biochemistry, cell and tissue biology, and genetics into one course. That's an 8 credit course. And concurrently, you would be doing anatomy. Anatomy is broken up into two, let's think of them, two blocks. You get the fall and the spring term. Let's think of that. That's why fall and spring term. In the fall, you're doing kind of gross anatomy of the large organs and body systems. Okay. And then in the spring term, you would do the head and neck anatomy. That's a lab and a dissection course. And then also in the spring, you'd come back and do physiology. So in that first year, those are courses that all the medical students are taking at the same time and podiatry students. So you can go toe to toe and prove that. And then in the second year of the course, you get the more master's specific coursework. This is where you're going from going to more small seminar-based classes that are specific to, let's say, communication skills like seminars and anatomy. They could be advanced dissections. They could also have an elective choices where they want. If they want to do research, they can do that too. So they can pick and choose a few options in that second year of the program. And thank you again, Jabin, for plugging that on the chat there.
And so the other question is, so you do like live dissection of whole, so you have to do the whole
the whole body, yeah.
The whole body.
The
to
whole
take
body.
the skin and fat and
Absolutely. It's a fascinating opportunity to be able to really understand the whole body, to bring your knowledge down to that level. You know, you integrate both the gross anatomy, the cell and tissue biology, and a little bit of the embryology there. Okay, as you're doing that. Again, if I think of the success of our program, we've had folks that have gone on just with the masters that have gone on to teach. In fact, at one of our small liberal arts colleges around the corner from us, Grandview University, the head of the biology department is actually a graduate from our program during my time here, and she graduated just with a master's in anatomy, and she's the head of biology, a professor of biology there. So again, I think of anatomy as, remember I mentioned earlier in my talk about that practical skill, so that practical skill that you want to have. I'm not going to say that we're plumbers, like we can't be replaced. But there's something about anatomy that, because it's tangible and it's necessary for the learning component, and it's so important for teaching future doctors, that I think it's a good fallback career for folks who maybe want that. Will want that maybe fallback career there. That's a good opportunity for them. And of course, a great stepping stone for if you want to go on to the clinical sciences.
Oh, we have another good question in the Q&A. They're asking about how your understanding of human anatomy in a deeper level changed the way that you view the world and people now.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I think my understanding of biological variation was really enhanced by dissecting the human body. I think if you just look at the human body in the textbooks, the Netters or the Grants, and you think, oh, that's what it's like, that's what it should look like. And the moment you open up the human body and you see all the variation, you see the different placements of the kidney or the spleen or the different bulbs or growths, so you realize, oh my goodness, the human body is really variable. I think the one, perhaps if I can think of the generalization is that it is so atypical. Okay, and once I started doing that, I realized, man, there's so much variation that we can take into consideration and that we need to be aware of. We need to be aware of, that clinicians need to be aware of when you're going in. Don't just blindly go in and cut and make assumptions about what that is. Understand the human body, understand the communities that you're looking to treat, understand those population groups too. So yeah, there's so many new things that I've learned through anatomy. I'm trying to think what's the most recent fun thing that I pulled out. Oh, geez. Oh, well, yeah, we're doing a really cool project on a spinal cord that was coiled up. We dissected every year. We do a laminectomy where you remove the lamina. These are these bones at the back of if you run your fingers down your spine, you'll find the spinous processes sticking out. And if you remove those bones right next to the spinous processes, these are the lamina. And if you remove them in a row, you can actually see the spinal cord. So we do this every year. And this year, for the first time with a donor, we found that the spinal cord that was sitting in there was weirdly coiled up, kind of like it was braided. And we had no idea why this was the case. And it seemed like this individual, just prior to death, the spinal cord had kind of ruptured or had pulled away from its anchor point. And that sheer force that happened there caused it to coil up. And we were totally involved. We were thinking, well, is this a developmental abnormality? That was some of the initial idea that we had. Okay, maybe it's developmental, but how on earth could this individual live this long with this developmental anomaly? Or is it artifact? Or when did the artifact happen? So using your critical thinking skills to kind of narrow down what may have happened to the individual, that's really important. Some of the skills, some of the career paths that some of our students come on from here would be things like working for the medical examiner's office, doing the exact same thing in many ways, or going on to do forensic anthropology or be working as a pathologist. Again, the same skill set. These are what our students are doing. We have world-renowned forensic anthropologist, and Dr. Heather Garvin was in our department who works on that. And again, CSI is the big rage. When I'm driving, I'm always listening to crime components. But again, these are good skills, okay, that we teach folks. What else? Oh, geez, I'm trying to think what is the other coolest thing. Oh, wow, I found a nail once, a nail in a human brain. I was fascinated. I have no idea. It must have been a nail gun injury, but the nail was in there. It was rusty in the ventricle of the brain. This individual went on to live. I have no idea. It just somehow did not impact them. So somehow it got all the way into the lateral ventricle. It's just fascinating to think about.
And how did that person, like, no bleeding, nothing,
No
like
bleeding. We couldn't find anything. And with
no
this,
neuro deficiencies? Wow.
it was really unusual to us. You learn so many. Oh, another cool thing. We were doing the reproductive system about 2 months. Sorry, this was almost 2 years ago. It was my first time finding this. I found I guess if I call it an old school penis pump. Okay, this was before the days of what do you call it again? Viagra. Okay, and what we had is, as we dissect the individual's testicle, we found like a perfume bottle. If you think of those little perfume bottles where you depress, you just compress that. It was in the individual's testicle. It was like, what on earth is this? I thought I had unwrapped something unusual, pulled on it, and you'd see it with just an old school approach where it would basically just push a little bit of fluid into a tube and would allow the bodily functions. It was fascinating. So again, you're thinking about the prosthetics. Of course, we see the usual tungsten prosthetics that you see maybe on lower limbs, but there's also other kind of prosthetics that kind of happen that you kind of find in the human body. And you're always fascinated by the marvel and the engineering that goes into biomedicine.
I work in the ER, so we see a lot of interesting things.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure you guys see it. You must see it more vivid than we do, in fact. That's perhaps the one caveat that we don't do enough of, that vivid dissection where you see the colors and you see everything.
Very awesome. The other question wanted to ask about the program. You said that there is the thesis and the non-thesis.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about that as well?
So in the thesis program, folks are coming in with a specific interest in going on to either careers in anthropology. I would say that's biological anthropology, where they would work with one of our faculty mentors, okay? Or they would go working with one of our paleontologists that we have in the department too. So in a thesis, you have a faculty mentor that's really placing you onto a career path towards heading into a graduate program. And that's final graduate path is usually towards a PhD career path, although it could just be, if you were to think of your terminal degree, as a master's student. Okay. The non-thesis path, again, those are typically for students that want to take that step towards the clinical disciplines. So it's kind of preparatory, kind of a usual post-Bacc path. Both of them, however, are essentially 2-year programs. The courses are slightly different, of course. For the thesis students, they're not interested in the biochemistry. They just want to do the pure anatomy.
Do we have any more questions? Somebody wants to know a story about medical school with the lowest GPA licks determination, unlike others. I would just say that we have a lot of interesting medical students that have come and spoken. We had a 54-year-old medical student. We had someone who started at 47.
Yes.
I don't know if you have anything to share, Ms. Johnson or Dr. Spactor, about
students that have come there, kind of an unusual path. I remember a few years back, Tessa, I can't remember the student's name, but he came as a career path, having been a veterinarian, sorry, okay, and in a prior life, and then made his way back to becoming and then entering into the DO program. Who did we have specifically in the master side? Let me think about it, Tessa. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, it's hard to say. We've had so many. I mean, I think the different stories and sort of winding past and things, those can really be things that make you stand out. I mean, going through coming from a low GPA and then trying to bounce back from that, really building that resilience and grit, I think is one of the things that we know makes medical students really successful.
Yeah.
So going through overcoming some of those barriers, I think can actually be something that can help you be qualified for medical school because you have some of those characteristics that sometimes can't be taught. But we know those are some things that can really make students stand out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would just always say is that if you're early on in your career, aim for high, but also learn why you're struggling. I think that's the most important thing you have to do because it's a really hard thing to look at yourself introspectively and find your weaknesses and strengthen them. And just because one person got in with low GPA doesn't mean that's going to apply to everyone. So always aim to that high. I don't think anybody have any other questions. If you have anything else to add. Also, Dr. Sparker, I'm in California and Christina is in DC. So, we're like all the places you've been. So we can tell you how it is. But
Oh, that's great. Oh, that's excellent stuff. Well, that's cool. That's good. You guys are following my path here along the way. East Coast, West Coast.
East Coast. That's
Hopefully
right.
you
We're
both
East.
will end up in the middle of the country like me. There's the state fair if you haven't been yet, Jobin.
So I worked for a political campaign,
Uh-huh.
and yes, I've been to the Iowa State
State fair.
Fair, and I've eaten fried Twinkies. What other things? I wrestled with a hog.
Oh, really?
That was very interesting for me. For I think 3 days, I had mud and things getting out of me.
Oh,
That was
geez.
interesting. But yeah, no.
Yeah, that's good. Well, that's good. Well, folks,
Well,
if you haven't envisioned yourself in Iowa yet, just take it from Jabin over here. You can make your way out here and realize that you can find a community, you can find a school that's thriving, and resources that can assist you towards your career and educational goals.
all righty. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. And sorry we started. I literally had to run down to um, Starbucks because I didn't have power at my place. So,
Thinking about resiliency, Jabin, that's a thinking of the guy.
well, I didn't get in an accident, so that was. All righty. Well,
Awesome.
thank you again, and have a great weekend. And Miss Johnson, see you on the 26th.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, folks. Have a good weekend.